Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the Ultimate Doctor Who Marathon. This is the show where I look at every classic Doctor Who story plus a bunch of big finish audio dramas, one episode a day, 7 days a week. Uh, and today, on the 31st of August 2020, I am taking a look and discussing the 20th anniversary special of Doctor Who, The Five Doctors. Now, before we begin, as in 2019, YouTube was caught data mining the information of underage users, therefore violating the Children's Online Privacy Protection Act, or COPPA. They reached a settlement with the US government in which they implemented a new policy meant to dodge responsibility and scapegoat creators, meaning I have to ensure that everyone understands that this video is not meant for children. It is not marketed towards kids, it is not advertised towards kids. Doctor Who is a family show, of course, that kids can watch, but this video, as with all the videos on my channel, are looking at the show through an adult perspective. Viewer discretion is advised. I also would like to make it note that this video, unlike other videos in this series, is working off of a rough outline, a written down outline, instead of just thoughts as they come into my head, as this is a story that is, 90 minutes long. It's a 90-minute special, and, trying to do it all in one go would be difficult. So we're actually just having to do notes, so I make sure I have everything I'd like to talk. That out of the way, The Five Doctors. So, The Five Doctors actually opens really well. We open with a little pre-credit sequence. It's just the Doctor's goodbye speech to Susan, essentially. Well, a slightly shortened version of it. Done in sepia tone from the Dalek invasion of Earth, which I think, harkening back to the second season of the show and the second Dalek story, and I believe at that time one of the earliest, probably one of the earliest stories that still existed in the archives, as many of the 60s shows were missing, is actually really, really good. It's also a really, really good way to get William Hartnell involved in the special, as he passed away in 1975, so obviously he wasn't able to take part. His widow did approve the use of a recasting the role, and they did so, with Richard Herndl in the role, which I will discuss later, as he does give a very, very interesting little. He gives a very interesting performance as essentially the first Doctor. This is but a new version of the first Doctor, not the old Hartnell that we all know and love. This is a newer, obviously, Hartnell, which we'll talk about later. The story proper actually starts with the introduction of the new TARDIS console room, which will actually be the last console. It'll be the console room that lasts for the next 7 years until the end of the classic series, and only be revamped in the TV movie. And honestly, I actually really like the design. It's not my favorite console room. That's still the TV movie version. But this one is up there with good designs. It's iconic. It's sort of what it and actually the console room 4 are the two ones that you most think of when you think of classic console rooms. It also helps that it's full of buttons, and it does look like incomprehensible and alien, like a real complex piece of machinery. Some people say it may be a bit too cluttered, but I disagree. And while that is a very nice thing, I will say the first 13 minutes or so of this special are kind of a mess. Now, this is a script by Terrance Dicks, and Terrance Dicks' script is, I will say, it is full of hilarious moments and, just a bunch of humor and things. But a lot of that first 13 minutes is straight exposition, essentially getting all the Doctors time scooped, and sadly, that means that the fifth Doctor, Peter Davison, actually doesn't have a lot to do in the early part of the special. It actually isn't until he really meets the first Doctor about a third of the way through, actually a little over a third of the way through this special, that this Doctor actually does stuff. It isn't I mean, it isn't the worst thing ever, but it is a shame, because he's the leading man. He's the main character. He's the one who we should be following, but sadly we don't get to have. We don't get a lot of him, uh, which is a real shame. I will say the Doctors being time scooped up, most of them, really, the only Doctor who gets a decent scene is the second Doctor, because then, um, he then gets time scooped, with the Brigadier, and that's fun, and the Brigadier is with him, and again, the pairings of Doctors and companions, are very, very interesting. It really isn't, oddly enough, until Anthony Ainley's Master shows up that you really get to see. You get to see this special get kicked into high gear, with the High Council sending him into the death zone after the Doctors, as someone's been taking the Doctors out of time for nefarious purposes. And Anthony Ainley, throughout this entire special, has the time of his life as the villain. He's chewing the scenery. He has actually really, really good chemistry with John Pertwee in the middle of this. He has great chemistry with Peter Davison. It's all a lot of... It's a lot of fun to see Ainley in this role, and you get to see everything done with him so differently. But yeah, once all the characters get to the death zone, that's when we can actually really starting to have fun with the story. So yeah, now in the actual death zone, we actually obviously have to pair everyone up, and mostly that's just done with pairing up the third Doctor and Sarah Jane, played by Elizabeth Sladen, and the first Doctor and Susan, played by Carol Ann Ford. Now, oddly enough, the early scenes with the first Doctor and Susan are where Richard Hurndall shines. He really does, feel kind of like the grandfather, a bit crotchety, but sharp as a knife, and a character who you definitely have the sense of being a solid character, and the first Doctor as we know it. They're in metal hallways, and they all look the same, and it's tongue in cheek in quite a lot of ways. But it is, but it is also just they fight against a Dalek, which is just again, an actual foe to fight. Which is cool, which allows the Daleks to be in here. They aren't some big foe, as the big foe is focused on Gallifrey, as there is the big conspiracy of someone of the High Council bringing the Doctors together for this. It's eventually that they want to gain immortality. Now, sadly, the third Doctor and the fourth Doctor are both perhaps done poorly in the getting together session. Of course, Tom Baker did not want to appear in this special, so instead of actually getting him in and just making it the four Doctors, they use footage from Shada, which obviously was nice. Actually, really, it's actually kind of a smart decision, because nobody's seen that actual footage at this point. It's not like now where we've seen completed versions of Shada. This is new footage with the Doctor and Romana punting down the cam, and it's seeing them abducted like that is fun. It is a really, really fun watch. And of course, the Douglas Adams dialogue sparkles. But the third Doctor and Sarah Jane's meeting, on the other hand, is not serviceable. It comes at about a fourth of the way through the special, and Sarah Jane falls down a hill, and it doesn't look great. And apparently the hill itself was steep, but the way it's shot definitely doesn't make it clear. And it's things like this that really show one of the major flaws of the special, being the direction by Peter Moffat. Now, Peter Moffat has directed for the Davison era before, and he's perfectly serviceable as a director, but he is very bland, and he's very much of the Richard Martin school of point and shoot, and not really doing things that are intentionally interesting or expand on making the shots good. And so it's a real shame, because John Nathan-Turner actually originally wanted either Wars Hussein or Douglas Camfield to direct this. which is weird because he should have. So he kind of made the wrong choice even after those two weren't available, just to go to his third choice with Peter Moffat. Um, but once Sarah Jane is rescued, we actually get a lot of fun. A big chunk of the middle of this story is everyone converging on the tower, the Dark Tower, which is the Tomb of Rassilon, which is a very, very cool idea. They all have trials, and there are plenty of returning monsters. Of course, the Master is sent in to save them, and while that's happening, you have a bunch of Cybermen there. You also then have a Yeti, which attacks the Second Doctor and the Brigadier, who everyone has amazing chemistry. Everyone has stopped like anything else. Nicholas Courtney is amazing. Liz Sladen is amazing. Patrick Troughton is amazing. John Pertwee is amazing. Once Peter Davison gets into the plot, he's actually really, really good. It's just in this third section where the troubles come in with Richard Hurndall. Which again, I'll get to that in just a minute. But first, I'll also even say that there are an original creature called the Raston Warrior Robot, which is a perfect killing machine, which is actually a really, really cool concept, and it appears in a really, really effective scene. A scene that definitely feels, like it's meant to be something different. This is something that I thought was just really, really good, and a lot of fun, just to watch. The issue with Richard Hurndall is mainly down to the writing of Terrance Dicks. He's, he can do the grandfatherliness of the First Doctor, and Hurndall is truly doing his best. But there are bits, especially once the First Doctor gets into the plot, where he comes across as the rude one, as the one where you see just how he's portrayed as rude and mean and kind of sexist. Like, he makes Tegan make tea and makes her feel kind of unreliable, which is a real shame because Hurndall has the mannerisms down. And I mean, Tegan, it's done to be sort of a there is a bit of back and forth as to if he's actually somehow evil, and Tegan sort of, I guess, teaches him the error of his ways, but that just doesn't work. I will like how at the end he's the one who solves the problem and realizes what's going on. That's always a fun tradition, having the First Doctor being the patient one and able to see just that, that he's able to see, what the danger for what it is. But this is really something, and though this is really though there's just a lot of downsides. In particular, note the easiest pie sequence, the chessboard sequence, as most people know it, where him and Tegan are in the tower. The Master, there's a chessboard that's electrified. The Master tricks a bunch of Cybermen to go over it and get killed. The Master sort of does this famous easy as pie line, sort of hinting to the Doctor that, oh, it's the Greek symbol pi, so 3.14159, etc., etc. Those are the squares you go under, and they both just sort of walk over. Like, it's weird that you're going to that. And Terrance Dicks clearly included it as a mean to be like, here's some actual clever stuff. But, you don't actually get to see the clever stuff. It's just sort of talked about before we go, over with. It's just sort of there. And that kind of nicely brings us right around to the actual plot on Gallifrey, aka a lot of the stuff with the Time Lords, and the High Council. Obviously, there's this is a plot that the Fifth Doctor sort of gets embroiled in. They send the Master in. the Doctor seals the Master's transport and not believing that he's actually there to help, and he makes it back to the High Council and is actually kind of in belief that, oh, the Master was telling the truth. That's weird, but I guess I'll have to accept that now, which is, actually really, really, it's actually a really, really fun sort of bait and switch, because you think, oh, the Master's not actually going to be real, and you have the conspiracy of, someone, of, people, reactivating the time cube, doing things that have been illegal on Gallifrey. They've been outlawed for good reason. This is a dangerous game, is the game of Rassilon. He who wins shall lose. To win is to win is to lose. To lose is to win, and he who wins shall lose is the riddle in the actual tomb. And it's actually revealed that, you have, first you think, oh, is it going to be the Castellan, who is the sniveling one from, played by Paul Jericho, this, or is it going to be one of the Chancellors? You have the character of Barusa, who is there, but he's not, and Barusa, and it's accidentally revealed that Barusa is the evil one. But yeah, this is the Castellan from Arc of Infinity, the sniveling one, sort of the latest in the long line of sniveling ones. You get to see, just the character, as this very, very, different sort of character who ends up who ends up being killed, and being framed. There is something, there is something very, very, very different, there, there is, there is something so very, very, very wrong about him being killed, and then Barusa being revealed to be the twist villain, that you really, really feel the betrayal here. This is something where you get to see, a lot of sadness in the Doctor's eyes, before Barusa's, eventual death, because he does lose in that final scene, which oddly enough brings me to perhaps the most important part of the Five Doctors, the story as an anniversary special. So yes, the Five Doctors is an anniversary special, and it adequately actually celebrates the 20 years of Doctor Who really, really well. This is every other episode of Doctor Who essentially looks forward to see where the Doctor's going, whereas this one essentially looks back at where he's been. Now, of course, it's been criticized by some as not really being the Five Doctors. I believe it was David Tennant who said something along the lines of, it's really three doctors, a dude in a wig, and a waxwork, and a waxwork. Due to referencing the famous photo shoot where they use the Tom Baker waxwork, because Baker, who was supposed to be at the photo shoot even, didn't show up, which was, kind of sad and kind of a disappointment. But no, it's not that. That doesn't matter. Like, the returning Doctor, all the returning actors are great. Nicholas Courtney, of course, I can praise. That ends with his chemistry with Patrick Troughton, and he gets to punch the Master, which is kind of cathartic and just fun to watch. Elizabeth Sladen, is great stuff paired with John Pertwee, and Carol Ann Ford. Seeing her back is also just amazing, and those are our three big companion returners. You also have a bunch of return. Here's the thing: you have a bunch of fan service and fan wank, but it's all done really, really well. On one hand, you have all of the villains. You have all these returning villains. You have a Dalek in the opening scene. You have the Cybermen, and you have the Yeti, and you have a nice new villain with the Rastin Warrior robot, who's such a cool villain at the end. It's all done in service to the fact that this is the big anniversary, and we are going to have a lot of fun with the anniversary story, with the fact that we can have fun here. That this, as an anniversary, you're allowed to have fun, and you are allowed to see this story through to the end as something so completely different. This is something. This is something, very, very different. There are also a lot of cameos. There's a lot of cameos from stuff in the story. We get one from K9, which is great early on. You have a bunch of phantoms that appear, and you have a bunch of phantoms that appear right there. So you get in the middle of the story to the third and second Doctors, and obviously, specifically, it's nice to see Carol and John and Richard Franklin again in their cameo roles, and their scene is actually really sad with the third Doctor, and meanwhile, the second Doctor has to confront Jamie and Zoe, who have forgotten him, but claiming they didn't. It's all very, very surreal and very, very different, and it's all done really nice. This is an episode for the fans, and you just love them all. And even the big villain, Barusa, is defeated by Rassilon, sort of the founder of Time Lord Society. You finally get to see Rassilon, and he doesn't do the most. He's mostly a big booming voice villain, like a lot of them. He does have the presence that the character has been built up to have, and is very clever. I'll also even say that once the Doctors actually get together right at the end, that is really, really, really nice and really, really just fun to see. And I can't help but say I love the way it does. I mean, the Doctors' interactions with each other in those last 20 minutes or so of the entire story. This is a very, very different sort of things that just the story does. And what's nice is that we end on a line of the Doctor sort of ending where he began, running away from Gallifrey in a rackety old TARDIS, because after all, that's how it all started. The Five Doctors it's flawed in a lot of ways, but still, even through the flaws, it shines through. It's a joy from start to finish. And keeping in mind these flaws, but still acknowledging it for the work of a brilliant script that it is with brilliant performers, I can give the Five Doctors an 8 out of 10. And if you're a fan of the show at this point, watch this one if you haven't. Like, it's fun. You'll have a good night of it. Of of course, I watched the transmission version, but there's also the special edition version, which is an extended cut released in 1995 and available in the DVD release of the story. They're both available and both restored. But, other than that, that's actually the end of the Five Doctors. So, thank you everybody for watching this installment of the Ultimate Doctor Who Marathon. As always, please leave a like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already. And join me next time when we actually look at a story that takes place just after the story. And it's a special Big Finish release. I believe released around the time of the 45th anniversary, or possibly the 25th anniversary of the Five Doctors, with Doctor Who, The Five Companions.